con mucho alegría y gozo. Is that how you say it, Ron?
Yep.
Con mucho
alegría y gozo.
Yeah, and so I think we're actually running live now. Good morning, everyone. Ron, would you like to say buenos días?
Muy buenos días a todos, que Dios les bendiga. Es un gozo poder estar con ustedes en esta mañana.
Yes. He said, good morning.
There we go.
Thank you very much. No. Thank you guys for being here this morning. This is back here on Facebook Live, and today we're going to be given an update from what's going on in El Salvador and Guatemala, primarily kind of a focus on El Salvador today. And as you guys have seen, if you've been following along, some of these events or some of these Facebook Live streams, we haven't been able to interact in a live fashion from the video, but today we would also like to hear your questions and comments that you might have, that you can post there in the comments, and hopefully we can answer some of those questions. But what we wanted to start with is give you guys an update of what's going on in El Salvador and Guatemala. Ron, if you want to start us off, how have things been going in terms of these relief and recovery efforts and in terms of food distribution over the past few weeks?
Well, right from the beginning of the crisis, going back all the way to like March 15th, 16th, churches were starting to identify families, meet with their community leaders, try to figure out really how they're going to respond. As the crisis got worse, as the stay-at-home orders became more pronounced, or at least the regulations became more tight, so to speak, to go out. Obviously, it became worse and worse. People now have been in the house for at least 60, 65 days. Many of them cannot go out or go out very limited fashion, which is just making it worse for basically everyone. For those that, 72% of the population of El Salvador live off the informal sector. So for these families, that means if they don't work today, they're not going to eat tomorrow or the next day. I mean, it literally comes down that simply. So 60 days into this thing, or 65 or 70, whatever it is, obviously the situation has got worse, which means that pastors and community leaders are trying to reach out the best they can. They originally started using their own resources, and then we helped them try to connect the mayor's offices, connect the government funds. They've been trying to figure out who are the most vulnerable and really trying to get resources into it. And today they've been doing an incredible job. Just in El Salvador, these churches have been able to mobilize with their community leaders food and hygiene supplies for 3,698 families. That translates into 18,490 people. If you look at it from the number of meals, it's 443,760 meals have been provided by their efforts of trying to engage. Now, as the situation has kind of gone on, we thought that after a couple months, we'd see some flat numbers, where it'd stay about the same, and we could really try to figure out how we could help families over a 3 to 5 month period and really focus on those 50, 60 families in each community that most needed. What we're seeing is the opposite. More companies now, bigger companies are closing down, so people now are being laid off more permanently from their jobs. The numbers are starting to rise. So the other thing that happens is that, after the government kind of gives their shot, then and the nonprofits help, then there's a bigger gap between what people need. So we've started last week being able to mobilize what little resources we had coming in from some amazing church partners to be able to supplement that. So just in El Salvador, between the last 8-10 days, 401 families have been served with kind of Enlace resources to kind of fill these gaps, which is 2,005 people, roughly 72,000 meals, and that's just in El Salvador. This week, another about 300 families are going to be served. It's about 300 or 400 families now every week until about July 5th, 6th, until we run out of money, basically.
Right.
And so we're just we've talked about this before, we're kind of all in. We've got to resource these families the best we can. So, overall, the effort is phenomenal, the amount of work that these pastors and community leaders are doing. But it does feel like every week is not enough. I mean, it
Right.
just, it's starting to feel more and more like there's still more now need being generated, and the pastors and leaders are, it's overwhelming. I think it's just overall overwhelming for them to know, okay, we did well for these 60 families, and now 60 new families came onto our list. And what do we do
Right.
for these families? So it's a pretty crazy situation. I mean, crazy is kind of a dumb
Yeah.
word, but it's an
Well,
overwhelming situation for, I think,
and
for most.
yeah, and clearly, I think people in these communities are feeling desperate. And one of the things that came to light last week was the fact that all over El Salvador and Guatemala, families have been flying white flags in representation of, not that they're giving up anything, but that they're in desperate need, and representation of that. And actually, let's see if we can do a screen share here of some of the pictures and videos uh, from when our staff were out in the communities. Everybody hopefully are seeing that. But you can see here, and Ron, talk us through kind of this idea of how these white flags were being used, especially last week. We're going to get to what happened over this past weekend and with flooding and storms. But even before that, tell us a little bit about this.
Well, as you can see, people are really restricted from leaving their houses. And so church communities have been trying to call either the families or actually help identify the needs of the families by talking to their neighbors. In other words, church members are saying, okay, who are your 5 neighbors, your 10 neighbors that are most needed? And they're trying to go individually to their house. But yet it's still hard to get to many of these remote areas. And so people are literally at a point of saying, I've got less than 3-4 days of food. I don't know if we're going to make it past this week. And they're starting to put up these white flags. The white flags are to identify to their neighbors they need help, but also in case there is any distribution for, by the government or by church community leaders or by other NGOs, that they might kind of call their attention to the fact that we are a family in need. And as you can see, both those pictures, you can kind of, obviously you can see the need of people before the crisis. I mean, these are people living in marginalized kind of squatter towns or shanty towns, however, whatever word you want to use, corrugated laminate steel and wood trees to hold up their walls. These are already people that are living on less than $1 per day, feeding their kids. It's somewhere between 17 and 18 cents per meal right now is what they, can you break it down, because per day, per person. So these are people already struggling. In this particular picture you're looking at, this is a marginalized area, kind of on the outskirts of town. So these people, if they could find job, would go in, like the women might go in and clean, or planchar, they'll do some ironing, or they'll work day labor. Men will go find day labor with jobs. Well, all of that is not active right now, and they can't leave their houses. So
Right.
their current situation or their previous situation is compounded by the crisis, and it gets them, leaves them to where literally they're flying a white flag.
Right. And then we had
You got a busy schedule
screen.
there, Dave. This is cool.
Sorry. I thought I was going to here, but anyhow, we have this video of.
That's actually Franco coming into, one of our staff coming into one of the communities, and you can see they're going all the way out now to the street, the main streets, to let them know. Most of these people live, more remotely off the street, but they're actually coming out to the main highway to let anyone know that in those, if you take usually about a kilometer or maybe a mile in is where they live. So they're actually not only just in front of their houses, they're literally coming out to the main highways to try to flag someone down, saying, hey, there's families in need in our community. So it's becoming more and more desperate as the days go on.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, if the existing hunger situation wasn't enough, I mean, it's kind of crisis compounding on crisis in a lot of ways. With clearly the fear of the pandemic itself, and then hunger crisis on top of that, and then economic crisis. Tell us a little bit about what has happened this past weekend. I don't know that a lot of people have actually been able to follow with so much of the also difficult news that we're following in the United States and in other areas. What has been happening to El Salvador over this past, the past week or so?
Yeah, so Tropical Storm Amanda hit us pretty much straight on, hit El Salvador and then the southern part of Guatemala, basically straight on, caused just torrential rains, amounts of water that you don't see for, months, within a, 6, 8, 10-hour period. It started Sunday, went into Monday, and I think you have some pictures there. And if things weren't worse or bad enough, you could see the force of the water there. But if things aren't bad enough, there's now a second set of storms now that are lining up and hitting us as of yesterday, which is crazy. So this is in one of the communities, Guarnesia. You can see this is the Rio Lempa totally over its borders and now going in to houses. There's huge erosion. Whole houses are being taken down rivers. It's also causing huge problem as far as transportation, because a lot of the main roads now, either the bridges are being affected, trees are on the main streets. There's risk of erosion in many of the places that we have to drive by to even get to these communities. So it's creating two kind of immediate dangerous situations. One is for those families that live either on slopes that are high risk and or close to rivers. And then the
Right.
second thing it's doing is that it's closing down all the different ways that people normally would be able to get to, like to get to a grocery store, to get to food, you'd have to go out to one of these main roads, and many of these main highways are now being blocked. It's also cutting off chains of distribution. So even food coming into the country is being affected. As far as our relief effort, we've had to be really careful. There's huge sinkholes now, even in town. San Salvador's been rocked. There's huge sinkholes, and you could show that video, Dave, if you want to, just to show the force of the water.
Exactly, to give you an idea of what it's like even in the urban areas over this past weekend.
Yeah, the amount of water and the force. There's whole bridges, big bridges in town that are being undermined now and are dangerous, to collapse. And so, like I was mentioning, even for us to mobilize and get out to the communities right now, we're waiting for periods that there's no rain. We're taking alternative routes way around major highways. Our food distribution truck that was all set on Monday to go out couldn't go out. So we're trying to get it to go out today. So it's affecting. These people are already living in an incredibly difficult situation, as you've seen from the pictures, and now these storms. The worst part about it is that there's supposedly 10 days more now of storms lined up behind us. So, it's going to be at least 10 days more of this kind of stress, but also of damage, and how it's affecting the economy. So, once again, it seems overwhelming for people as they, especially the pastors, community leaders, as they try to figure out how to help and how to respond both to the crisis, but now to the storm. We've got 3 churches. We're in constant contact with the churches. So as of Sunday, our church coaches and the rest of the team have been calling pastors to see if there's any needs in their community. Some are responding to houses that have been swept away. So we're trying to provide some laminate, some corrugated steel laminate for the churches, just to be able to rebuild some shelters. These people now these were already people that were vulnerable and high risk to the virus, and to be exposed outside in the rain makes it even more difficult. So these churches are trying to do that. We're trying to help these families. There's also another church that's providing shelter, using their church as a shelter for families that have lost their house. So we're providing mattresses for them, bedding, stuff like that, so that they can shelter these people in place. So once again, trying to respond to whatever the church and community are trying to identify, and at best trying to resolve this. We're trying to resource them and see what we can do as an organization.
Yeah. Well, it's incredible to think, of how difficult the circumstances are, that these churches are facing. We were just chatting with one of our partners with John Houston family companies, in Dallas, Texas area yesterday, and talking about we ended up talking about the feeding the 5,000, right? And how I remember that being one of the first sermons that I heard preached in El Salvador, translated to me, on the feeding the 5,000, and that these pastors with seemingly little in hand, and these church leaders, and not only seemingly but literally little in hand, are giving of what they have, and it has exponential impact. In the same way that when Jesus told them to find out what they had, and even told the disciples in Mark's version that you give them something to eat, and as they started to give with what they had available, it was multiplied. And so it's pretty incredible to see the fact that this is being multiplied. The gifts of these pastors and church leaders are being multiplied. And clearly, any of the resources that we've been able to raise so far through relief and recovery funds for Enlace have been incredibly multiplied in terms of what these churches and communities are already mobilizing. So in the midst of the craziness, I guess that's the hope of the church, right? That's the hope of Christ, that even no matter how overwhelming the situation would seem, that these pastors and church leaders are living out the gospel. So yeah, Ron, I don't know if you have any other thoughts or comments about where we're going and where we're moving forward. Clearly there's a lot of hope in the midst of this darkness, but tell us about what's next.
Well, I mean, let me respond to what you're saying, and then maybe we can go into what we originally thought was next and what I hope is next.
Yeah,
because it seems like every week the next is changing a little bit, or at least these days is kind of crazy. But yeah, it is humbling and inspiring and overwhelming, and to listen to the pastors. And over the last 7-8 days, I've had a chance to actually talk to pastors and to hear their hearts, and just to really understand that they're saying, Ron, we don't. How do we tell one more family now that just lost their job? How can we just say, hey, we're only going to focus on these first 50? How we can't do that. Even if that means we're going to give half bags to people so that we can make it stretch, or that means we're going to give, whatever. To hear them try to figure out, let's at least help these families with 15 days, even if we can't do a month, whatever we can, is inspiring, because they don't, these pastors themselves are barely making it themselves.
Right.
They live off of offerings from the church, and the church hasn't met now for 65 days. So unless members come by and give them some food or give them money, they don't have any income either. They're not like on a fixed salary that they just, and obviously all of their congregation is struggling, but for the same reason. So, these pastors are literally struggling as much as these families, and yet are still out there, feeling the burden, carrying the weight, working overtime to try to figure out how they can mobilize what little resources, both for the church and community members. They're not just working for their church members; they're really working for the community in general. And it's just amazing, when you actually hear their hearts and listen to them, and they're just basically saying over and over again, we just can't look away.
Right.
In other words, we can't ignore the fact of needs of people. We've got to figure out what to do. And it's just inspiring to me to, like you said, to be committed to the fact of looking at the reality, but also being committed to the fact of God's going to provide. We just got to keep using what we've got. We've got to be faithful. We've got to keep moving. And here's some pictures of these are the bags being delivered into the churches, this inside a church. And these are church members. And then they'll go out with community members to hand them out. Some of the pictures you're seeing. So it is truly inspiring. I can't, it's hard to put words around it. For me, it breaks my heart every time I hear it, because I want to be able to do more. And that's how they feel too. I think everybody feels like we just want to be able to do more.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And as far as next steps, we're already moving in. The idea was June, July to start thinking through kind of the mid to long-term strategies. The idea, as of right now, is to try to care for 2,500 families over the next 3 months, kind of on the emergency side of it. As you can see, the churches have already done over 4,000 just in El Salvador. So on our end, we're trying to, the amount that they're going to raise is going to go down. The amount that we're going to give is going to go up. And we should be hopefully caring for about 2,500 families over the next 2 or 3 months with food and hygiene packets. But along with that, you have, we just mentioned hundreds and hundreds of people that have lost their jobs or aren't able to, start their little stores or their little bakeries or, their little micro businesses. So we're already working with about 150 clients that we've been working with over the last 10, 12 years through our credit union. And we've been sitting down and really trying to, besides just praying with them, sometimes our credit officers saying that they're spending at least half an hour just crying sometimes with the client. And they don't know. They've been building this thing for 15, 20 years. And now they don't know when they're going to start, how they're going to make it to get going again. In all of these micro enterprises, that's their primary source of family income. So, they're desperate. So our credit officers have been praying with them, hanging out with them. In some cases, they've been, as a credit union, we've also been giving food baskets to these clients just for them to make it. And then simultaneously, we've been meeting with them, trying to help them think through. Some of their companies can start pretty quickly if they have some fresh capital. Others, it's going to take them longer. So we've been trying to restructure their loans. We're trying to get new capital into about 150 of these clients. We're calling it, for lack of a better name, a microfinance recovery loans. Mm-hmm. And the idea is to refinance their loan with some fresh capital and some training and some coaching so that they can, kind of start their businesses again. So that's what we're working on now. We hope into June to raise, we're trying to raise $100,000 to refinance those loans or refinance those businesses, or to actually help the businesses start so that in July, August, September, we'll be helping these families kind of rebuild their businesses and regenerate their income. We're also looking at farming. One of the major things right now is with these waters. We're really, really scared. One of the big hopes, we had our fingers crossed, was that in the rural areas, which about, I would say 65% of the churches we work with are in rural areas. The majority of the rural area lives off of farming. And so what we were really hoping is they could get their first crops in May and then start having some food June, July, August, which would help them as far as a family, but also bring down prices nationally because we could start getting production going. And we thought, okay, kind of banking on ag. With these rains, though, we've already got reports that many of our communities, those first seeds are gone.
Right.
So everything they planted now is gone for the first rotation. We have some that weren't affected as much. Others have. So we're, once again, going back to pastors, leaders, figuring out what's happening in each community and then have to respond. So many of these might not have access to seed because they use their whole wad in the first shot of it. Mm-hmm. So we're also looking at ag loans. We're looking at how we can mobilize seed and stuff. So that's all the stuff that's happening right now. That probably won't happen now till July because the water has to go through and we'll need to figure it out. So if we can get a second season in El Salvador, it rains for 6 months and there's no irrigation. So they try to get 2 seasons in, one in May and then one in July, August. Right. So the goal right now is to get a really good second season. Usually the second season is not as good as the first. So we're gonna have to really pray for a miracle that the second is successful. If not, we're talking about 12 to 18 months of struggle again, all the way till next July for many of these farmers. So once again, I wish I had more positive news. I mean, the positive news is what they're doing, but it just seems like every week it's becoming more precarious, and it just is going to require even more assistance on our part to really respond to what these church communities are trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And and clearly, as we've talked about a lot with this pivot, this shift that we've had to make as Enlace, it's incredible to see that even though we have primarily been focused on long-term, sustainable community development projects, this network of pastors and church leaders and community leaders are the most effective network to be able to respond effectively and efficiently in this relief situation. And so it's really opened up my eyes to be able to see that, though. I mean, it's just been incredible to see the way that they are responding, even in the midst of their own suffering. And clearly, with the relief and recovery efforts, the direct relief and recovery of feeding families and providing hygiene products, et cetera, for families, and then looking at this microfinance, relief for our existing clients who are the best of the best clients that Credit Tech, our microfinance organization, has had, helping to keep those businesses alive in the months moving forward. And then also next week, we're hoping, we're trying to schedule it right now, but we're going to be talking a little bit more about a collaborative effort that we're doing with multiple organizations throughout in the United States and Central America. So keep your ears tuned for that. Be on the lookout for information about that next week. But yeah, and as we keep talking about, there's multiple ways that the local churches are responding on the ground in El Salvador, and there's multiple ways that you can respond here in the U.S. as well to walk alongside. We're doing whatever we can to walk alongside these efforts are, and we keep talking about the give, sip, and run. You can give directly to these the Relief and Recovery Fund, which will help directly go to the efforts of feeding families who are in desperate need right now. And then for the SIP and run, all of these funds are also supporting the general effort for everything that's going on this year with Enlace around relief and recovery. And the SIP is obviously Enlace Coffee. So go to enlacecoffee.com if you have not signed up yet. You guys sign up by next Tuesday to get your June batch, which will be roasted literally like this weekend, and then shipped out to you by the end of next week. So enlacecoffee.com. And if you're already a member of that, please share it with somebody, challenge somebody else to be a part of it, or send them a bag of coffee, to let them know. We've had lots of great advocates help with things like that, spreading the word. So, and then with the run, here we are in June. And as Mark Haugen's been talking about, and I see Gail Martin just popped on here up in Rockingham Christian Church. And Gail and her team, they have already recruited 29 people to do the Hot Tamale 5K, which is incredible. And so we appreciate Gail and all of her efforts. But everybody, this Hot Tamale 5K can do it anywhere. It's literally just $40. And Mark Haugen will send you a running hot tamale medal and the hot tamale t-shirt, the quarantine edition t-shirt and stuff. But anyhow, my family, all four of us are going to try and do this 5K thing together at some point. I've been trying. Ron, how are you doing with your 5Ks? You were talking about 5K a day, walk, run, or something, right?
Yeah, I'm on my finish by third day. So my own challenge is to walk or run a 5K every day for June. The way that it's set up as far as the virtual is that just anytime during June you run or walk a 5K. That's what it is. But for me, I kind of took it as a personal challenge now that I'm at home and I need to lose some weight. The bottom line, but it's a good thing just to reflect on why I'm walking every time and to kind of keep that at the forefront of my walks, just thinking about what's happening and pray. And so it's kind of my own personal journey and challenge. So yeah, I finished 3 days, and
that's awesome.
Today's the 4th, so I got to get out there again.
That's incredible. Yeah, and so that's a great idea to treat it as kind of a contemplative time and a time of prayer. Or if you're like Gail, you can run in a taco costume. She says
that's contemplative too.
That can be contemplative as well.
Makes you hungry, but it's contemplative.
Yeah, we should see if anybody else can come up with some other costume ideas. I don't know what a big pupusa costume would look like, but
it wouldn't be too aerodynamic. you might get flipped over pretty quickly.
And make sure and put the cortillo on top of your head, the pickled cabbage, right?
Yeah.
Some kind of a wig or something for that. So, but anyhow, and Gail says they're going to do it at they're going to use a school parking lot so they can see each other. As they
very
kind of
cool.
do, which is a great idea. So you can keep the social distancing as well as get this 5K
awesome.
in. So yeah. Well, Ron, I don't know if you have any final sign-offs and if you'd like to close this out in prayer, but
sure. Well, thank you again for everything that our church partners and Gail and all our advocates and volunteers are doing. Really, we understand that the problems are huge. They're affecting us at home. in the States as well as worldwide. And so it being such a huge pandemic and affecting us so deeply, we truly do appreciate anything that you can do to help these families in El Salvador, Guatemala. So just thank you all for the sacrificial giving that you've done, whether you're running or you're sipping coffee or giving. We are doing our best to try to help these churches mobilize care and providing them the resources to do it. So thank you so much. And please let us know if you have any questions or comments on anything we're doing. We'd love to talk to you, reach out to you, figure out, how else, answer any questions you might have or field any kind of comments. So thank you again to everyone. Let me pray. God, in a week that it seems like the days and days of being at home, and I think recognizing how much our world is changing around us is bringing to the forefront a lot of frustration and pain at many different levels for different reasons. And as we look around, and now with El Salvador with the storms, and it just seems like for as much as we want this to go back to normal, that it can't happen at this point. And I pray, God, that we be okay with that we might be able to wrestle with the fact that we're going to have to wear masks. There isn't a quick vaccine. The economy is not going to come back immediately. The storms and the impact are not going to change. And as hard as that is for us to wrestle with, I pray, God, that we stop to do that. And we pray that you be with us during our wrestling, during our frustration, during our times of trying to think ourselves out of this box. Lord, I just pray that you might stop us and encourage us to just wait with you. Know that you are with us. Know that you will walk us through this, but also teach us what you want us to learn. Stretch us as far as even what we thought we could give personally of our time, of our resources. Stretch us in the way that we engage our neighbors and are more neighborly. Stretch us in the way that we care for our families and our friends. So I just give you this week that's been so hard for so many people. And I just pray that we might feel you close. We might know that you've gone ahead of us already into next week, and now are coming back for us to walk us through the next 6-7 days. But let us be aware, God, of everything that's happening. Let us be aware of how you're walking us and how you're guiding us. Reveal to us people's pain around us, so that we can learn and we can grow, and we can enact your love in more sophisticated and strategic ways around us. So I thank you so much for everyone on this program. I thank you for everyone that's given not only to Enlace, but to other organizations locally in their own states and their own cities, and for churches that are doing incredible work as much as they can in the States to help people around them and also people abroad. I thank you for all that you're doing through people's sacrificial gifts. And we pray all of this in your holy name, in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. And thanks, Ron, and thanks to everybody for being a part of this. And we just thank you for all that you're doing, even in your local communities. And like, as Ron just prayed, and giving to other organizations. And we know that we, as a global body, we are the church, and that we can provide hope even in the midst of these crazy times, if we allow ourselves to be used by God. So go out and be used by God this week, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys again next week. And in the meantime, thanks for everything, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Dave. See you guys later.